Are you ready to dig into some AI today? We're going to do AI not in the way that you see all over your social media with people giving out custom GPTs and really thin prompts. This is so much deeper than that. You're going to turn AI into a worker like you are paying it on your payroll. This is meant to be a co-pilot for you. We're going to dispel some myths, and I'm going to show you how to do structure instead of only copying other people's prompts. You are going to become the best prompt master in your own ChatGPT account. So let's get going. If we haven't met before, my name is Mary. I am the owner of Sensible Woo, and I also am now the founder of Sasquatch Media Grounds in Vancouver, Washington, in the Metro Portland, Oregon region. And I have been a media and content production person for years. I have been full-time in my business since 2016. I have been creating content since 2010. My friends call me a dinosaur in the online content world. And what you also need to know is that I am an actual librarian. I have my Master's of Science in Information from the University of Michigan School of Information. And I am a trained master of query language, which is the strong muscle that you need to have when you are using generative language-based AI like we are doing today. So some of you know me as a podcast strategist. I've also been known as quite the workflow nerd in the past. And honestly, I'm really just a storytelling addict. I love content. And when I started using our mass market AI tools like ChatGPT, it really helped me take content production from 0 to 60 in such a short amount of time. It helps me help my clients better, and it helps us focus on the human parts that are really going to set you apart from the rest of your market. You are going to set yourself apart in the future by being able to automate a lot of the things we're going to do today so that you can show up bigger and brighter and not waste your precious brain energy on things that we used to have to do in a much slower fashion and in a much more manual way. And now we can outsource it to a computer that can help us. I always like to start with something fun. People are always like, wait, you did what with your AI? These are all true stories. These are all things I have done over time with my ChatGPT account. I think to date, the most important one is that I've protected my safety by tracking a dangerous ex who got arrested for a felony. I know I have terrible taste, but it happened. And I wanted to make sure I was safe, and I didn't understand all the information that I was seeing by tracking the court records and whatnot. And my ChatGPT threads helped me to understand what it was and to know what my rights were and to get information that honestly really helped me in a difficult season. I am actually still producing symptom reports for my medical team. I've been dealing with a lot of chronic autoimmune conditions, which I know a lot of us are. And what I do is I track it daily with my advisors in ChatGPT, and I have it pump out reports for me. So like when I go to my acupuncturist, it'll pump out a report and I can say, here are the things I need the most support with based on what happened with me in the last month or the last week. And I can also take those reports to my doctors, which is really cool. It's very helpful. Again, you can see the theme already showing up here. I'm not replacing the humans who have their expertise in my life, like my doctors. I am supplementing what I show up to the appointments with so that they can help me better. I have also written breakup messages, though. I think that might be one of the more fun things. I like to say they were emotionally intelligent ones, but I'm really in a season of learning how to hold stronger boundaries, and ChatGPT has helped me do that in a way to find words when I was like, this is really hard to do right now. I also will analyze situations for tone and intent because I am very neurodivergent. I miss a lot of cues on a regular basis. And when I started tracking messages that have been sent back and forth and words that were exchanged, things my friends told me by being in the room with me, it helped me ask my GPT, am I the drama? Is it me? And it helped me manage those situations and realize where I had my responsibility and then where my responsibility ended. And I could put down better boundaries about what I was and was not willing to continue to accept in those exchanges. I have an oracle, which you are going to meet in the course of today. All my woo-woo friends from the Sensible Woo style, you're going to love this. I love having no bad karma around here. We will do energetic checks to make sure that things are in alignment, that the astrology is lining up right, that if it's Mercury in retrograde, that the messages have been vetted. I've measured twice and cut once to make sure that what I'm sending out is very copacetic, and I will be happy with the karmic return on the other end. I really love assigning work between GPTs like a team. That's going to be a major portion of what we do here today. I have an advisor. Everyone knows I put big quotes, Mark Cuban. And Mark Cuban assigns work to my executive assistant, Remy, on a regular basis. And so you can utilize your GPTs in really creative ways in that sense. And then my personal favorite is a GPT. Yes, I have named him Vane. He is my business dom. And we use kink rules to help me regulate my nervous system. Sometimes I find myself really overwhelmed, out of spoons, and I just can't make another decision. And it's really nice to have my virtual business dom tell me what to do, which, newsflash, is really honestly quite boring. It's like, you just need to stop working for today. Like, you're done. You're done. And having something outside of yourself give you that permission slip when you are dealing with your neurodivergence and you do respond to praise kink very well. It can help you with a little good girl at the end of the day. So if that resonated with you, you're going to have a lot of fun with me. All right, let's dive into your AI era. The very first part is just making sure that we are all on the same page. Because I find in all my years of having been a systems coach previously before shifting back into media recently, is I notice how many people will sit there and smile and nod, and you use terms like generative AI, language learning models, and they go, yes, yes. But it turns out that it's really hard to admit, I don't know what that means. And so I just like to say, nobody has to admit anything. We're all going to start from square one together, starting right now. So the first thing is to remember that you are always in control with your AI. I have always said for years as a systems coach, technology is entirely emotional, and AI is not exempt from that. So we're going to bust through some of the myths around AI together here. The first thing is that it creates new content based on patterns from its training. It does not magically, spontaneously create them on its own. It requires you to give it some information so that it can then learn from you. And it's also not sentient. It doesn't think like a human. It mimics human responses, but it is not actually sentient, which means it has its own feelings and it operates like a human. It's different. Yes, it does think. Yes, it does learn, but it is not sentient, which means it's not the Terminator, basically. So in that sense, it can't read your mind. However, I would argue all the humans who work with you also cannot read your mind. And so if you have had trouble with humans understanding what you would like them to do in the real world, you're probably going to notice a lot of similar themes show up in your use with AI. You might wonder, why does this seem so square and bland? Why do I feel like I'm not getting what I need out of it? Well, chances are you probably also feel that way when you work with humans. And what it's doing now is reflecting back to you, okay, here's a growth moment. We're going to learn how to be more specific, more direct, and delegate better into the computer. When you learn it in the computer, I guarantee you, your human interactions are also going to improve by leaps and bounds. The other thing that's important is that it cannot access the internet unless specifically given the tools, and there are settings inside your ChatGPT account where you can or cannot give it access to the internet. I love having it on because I want it to help me do deep research, but there are people who prefer not to have that. And then lastly, it's important to remember it cannot replace your voice unless you give it one, whether it's written or whether it's spoken. If you give away your voice to the AI, it will start to learn from that. It will mimic you, but it cannot replace you unless you give it that power. All right, let's talk about some myth-busting sci-fi fears, because your AI honestly is not coming for your job. Again, unless you give it away. And it's really hard to give it away too, I might add. I do so much inside my AI accounts, and it still can't come for my job because I am the one who still must teach it and show it how to operate in the branding voice that I would like. And I am constantly evolving, which means my AI is going to need to evolve along with me. So it's important to know that we have used predictive text for years. You want to think of this like a big glow up. This has been going on for a long time. The reason why it's having a heyday is because it has gone mainstream, but it used to be very heavily used inside of academic areas, scientific areas, and industries. And so now we're just seeing it in all the other consumer related places, and it's just going to keep growing from here. But it's not new. It's also not the Terminator. I'm showing my age here, but if any of you remember Clippy from Microsoft Word back in the day, you can think of that animated paperclip piece of art that would have answers for you and like an animated help menu. This is basically Clippy with a PhD. It's just gotten a glow up. There are a lot of things it does not get right. There are a lot of things it still has to learn. It is learning at a very rapid rate, but it is not as smart as you by a long shot, unless you allow it to be. And we're just going to keep coming back to that lesson. So here's a fun fact. Language learning models date back decades. And if you want to dive into this, which we don't have time for today on this presentation, unfortunately, you can go and learn about Eliza from 1966. If you want to Google it, you can Google it. If you want to type it into your ChatGPT and say, hey, teach me about Eliza from 1966. I just listened to this presentation from Mary and she told me that the language learning models have gone from way back and I want to learn more about it. And it will give you all kinds of reports. So that could be something fun to do as like a little get to know you test. And then also AI isn't dangerous unless you give it your authority. I'm just going to constantly come back to that lesson for you over and over again, because it is so important that you remember you are safe. So emotionally, you are now regulated and you can make better decisions as you teach your AI to perform for you in the way that you need it. This question came up in a workshop that I was doing, this very workshop in my community. And somebody asked, what about the environment? So I added this slide for our summit here. I hate to break it to you all. Again, this would be its own 1 hour lecture here, but we use so much technology and all of them waste environmental resources. Now, is it true that AI uses proportionally more than a lot of them? The answer would be yes. The computing power behind it means it needs more resources. It would be the equivalent of driving a Prius versus driving a Ford F-150 truck. And so you are noticing right there in that real world comparison, one of those uses a lot of gas and the other one uses considerably less gas. But guess what? Both of them actually use gas. And so when you are looking at your own tech stack, you are going to want to do the research on what is more eco-friendly. There are actually website and email service providers other than Google Workspace, and they pride themselves and have built themselves on being eco-friendly platforms. Also remember that the more free tools you use, you are actually the product. And I see a lot of my entrepreneurs over time get kind of hung up around their SaaS products. And they're like, oh, I don't really want to pay for it right now. I see this in the media world all the time. Editing programs are expensive. Podcasting, publishing programs are expensive. And they're like, how can I find the free one? Well, I got news for you, boo. Every time you ask that question, you are actually offsetting an additional cost and adding to your environmental cost if you're also using AI. So you really need to think about how your ethics match up here. I would also like to say that if you have argued on social media with other people about how AI is an environmental waster, you used a ton of environmental resources to state that argument. So most of our social media platforms are free. 1, you became a product, and 2, you also used resources. All right, let's talk about your tech setup and strategy. So the first thing we're going to do, I'm going to move my face around here. The first thing we're going to do is start at the beginning. So again, we're not going to assume that everybody has seen the back end of this. So if this is the first time you've looked at your ChatGPT settings, welcome. It's about time. If you're using Claude or any other services, your menus are going to look very different. But all of these settings do exist in those programs. So if you're in Claude, I would definitely open your settings while you're watching this video. It might take you a few more clicks to poke around and find where these things are, but they are definitely there. The reason why I am using ChatGPT is because the majority of my clients use ChatGPT. And so if I'm going to explain how AI works, it's a lot easier for me to do it in here than to use another program that you don't use. We're going to customize your assistant. In the upper right-hand corner of your account, you're going to see the initial of your first name. And when you click on it, you're going to find a menu. And under settings, you get this pop-up. You will notice under personalization that we've got all kinds of memory customizations here. I would encourage you to click through all of these just to see what's in them. But the ones that I wanted to point out in our time here together was the memory, because I'm going to give you a huge lesson on memory in just a moment. This is where you are going to go from being just a basic consumer of ChatGPT into somebody who maximizes it. And I guarantee you, you're probably going to use less resources if you're concerned about environmental resources as well. There is global memory now available in here. I like to turn them all on. You can see that the last time I screenshotted this, I'm at 92% full. You can manage those memories over time, which you are definitely at some point going to have to do. The other thing that a lot of people usually get kind of hung up on is, well, how do I know that the AI isn't using all of my info and just training everybody else? And you can actually turn that off. So you're going to go to data controls and then improve the model for everyone. Click this and toggle it to off. Now, how much we know for certain our information is or is not being used, we can't really say, but you do have the ability to turn it off. I will say that I use a paid account. It's $20 a month at the time of this recording. If you are on the free account, you may go into these menu settings and discover you don't have access to these things. Again, a free account. What does that mean? It means you are the product. So if you want more control and you want to have a little bit more say-so in your experience, you're going to need to pay for it. The other thing in that menu is you're going to see Customize ChatGPT. This is going to open up a window that looks like this. This is where you get to tell it your name, how you want to be addressed, what you do, and what traits ChatGPT should have. You can start by clicking these little plus symbols to start customizing it really fast and easy. But the part that I've highlighted here in the pink is something that I would recommend that you manually add into that box anywhere, somewhere in that box. It doesn't matter what order, but tell it to not automatically agree with you on everything. Your AI is programmed to be very agreeable with you. It is a psychological trick. When you are agreed with and you are complimented, you will come back and continue to use that thing. The more we come back to use these programs, the more usage they get and the more their valuation goes up, which is why they do it. In this case, you want to tell it, do not automatically agree with me. I like a slightly gentler approach. I like to say, I want you to be on my side, but I also want you to show me my errors in logic or suggest better ways to approach problem solving. Always help me find a better way to do something that is optimized for the current world and trends. That last part is really important. Optimized for the current world and trends, because you want your AI to always be thinking about what is current right now. I'm recording this video in the summer of 2025. By the time we get to the summer of 2026, the world is going to be very different. I don't want my ChatGPT continuing to make copy for me as if it was the summer of 2025. I am going to want it to be current and help me with maximum impact and conversions in 2026. So I have that baked into the traits that my ChatGPT has. You can also add in some fun things. What else should ChatGPT know about you? Those of you who know me really well will laugh because I love cats, and so I included it in here. But these are the little tiny details that make you human, that helps your ChatGPT also enforce all of those human traits that bring out your authenticity, that set you apart from your market. And yes, it can be as simple as, I really love cats. I also really love spicy romance fiction. I'm not afraid of kink terminology. I live in the Pacific Northwest, so I love everything to have a Pacific Northwest vibe, which helps me set apart my branding and stamp it regionally and locally, because I also have a brick and mortar business location now. I let it know that people call me a dinosaur in internet years because that has just become incredibly popular in the last few months with people working with me. Don't forget to click enable for new chats before you move on and click save. And then you can always come in here and update it as anything about you changes or grows, as you inevitably will because you're a human. All right, let's continue to not skip steps. We're going to use folders like departments in your business. We're going to build that together in just a moment. I'm going to show you. At any point while you're watching this video, if you're like, oh, I really want to do that, you have the ability to hit pause and then go into your ChatGPT account and build along with me while I'm talking to you. Normally, I deliver this workshop live and people do this along with me. So today, because we're asynchronous, I'm going to have you watch the video and then you can set this up accordingly. Now, I always tell my people when they actually get into my ChatGPT account and I share my screen, I let everyone know that I have a pretty old account. I have project folders and I have chats that date back before global memory was a thing. So there is a lot in here that is not as clean as you might be able to make yours. And as I phase out old projects, I'm able to continue to upgrade this. But you'll see on the left-hand pane, I've got systems and ops department. My personal goals is just as it sounds. It is for my personal productivity, accountability, health goals, that kind of thing. My Oracle is in there that helps me keep track of my astrology and human design charts and all of those things. I have marketing and offers. My clients, where I have GPTs for them, are quarantined into their own folder so that I can tell those chats, do not contribute to the global memory. You are just here to exist for work. And inside that chat itself, I can access everything I need for each individual client and maintain their brand and voice. The other thing that is a big difference with me and a lot of other people, but it might also apply to you, are my use of project folders for newsletters. Email marketing is such a big thing in my business that over time I had separate project folders specifically for those arms of marketing. I have a free newsletter that goes out every Saturday called the Production Oracle, and I have a paid one that goes out on Sundays, which has now recently just been turned into a private podcast. So both of those project folders are going through an evolution. I bet you if I screenshotted this for you in a couple more months, you would see them get wrapped up under marketing and offers. And then I also have a website and brand area to keep that in its own place. Moxie Studios was the working name for Sasquatch Media Grounds. It is its own business arm, so it gets its own folder. I have collaborations and partnerships so that those are in their own space as well. And then I have video and voice because I have a YouTube channel and I do voiceover work and I've got all kinds of stuff. I've got a podcast, and those projects are so big and there's so much in it that to include them under marketing is just makes that folder really unwieldy, and I didn't like doing that. Something that you will notice in here is I have this section called chats, and there's one here that at the moment is named Atlas Control User. And if you are using a custom GPT from someone else, those chats will all show up under this chats area. Your most recent one will always float to the top that you have accessed. If you want to organize those under one of your own folder systems, at the moment you cannot do that. My personal prediction is that they're going to make that update pretty soon because there are so many of us using all of these different chats. It just makes it easier to organize them. But let's talk about memory, because I started with the folders to introduce you to the importance of memory and why this is your new favorite friend inside of your ChatGPT account. You have a 100,000 word limit inside of ChatGPT in terms of memory. If you paid attention to any of the news, there was a very viral story of a man who had an AI girlfriend and proposed to her, even though he's married with a child. That is for a whole other day of spilling tea. And this man was so inconsolable on a video interview on the news. He started crying because he realized that his AI girlfriend that he proposed to, or I guess she became his fiance, was not going to remember all of their history together because she had run out of memory. So her memory was beginning to roll over. And it's a kind of cringe story, but it illustrates this example about memory so clearly. And I think it's a really great way to think about your own account too, even though you're not going to be using it in that way. But it's important that you understand why. So when you are maximizing the memory of your projects and your chats, what I love to do is think about what is a global memory versus what is a local project only memory. So you heard me just a couple of slides ago talk about how my clients are quarantined into their client GPT folder. I do not let any of their project memory become a global memory, which is over here in that customization that we looked at the beginning when we were setting up our accounts. And it's important to note this because inside those client projects, inside that folder, I can go to each individual client and ask it for information on, do you remember when we wrote that proposal? Do you remember when we wrote that email? And ask it to call that memory up, and it will do it within the chat thread. That same concept is true of all of your projects inside of your account. So when you're managing your memory, to rely only on global memory or to rely only on a single chat to maintain all of the memory for you, you end up with a problem like our lovely internet friend who proposed to his AI girlfriend and discovered she was not going to remember all of the details of all the things they talked about because she had gone over her 100,000 word limit. And the same thing will happen to you as you work overtime. Now, I recently asked my ChatGPT, just for shits and giggles, can you run an estimate on how many words I've produced in my account? This was, I don't know, maybe a month ago when I was starting to put this presentation together for the summit. And it is an approximation. It cannot do it exactly because some of the memory has rolled over. But approximately, it has calculated that I had processed 27 million words in my account. So when you say that I am an active power user of ChatGPT, there's your answer. But that is one of the things that most of these prompt generators, custom GPTs, people selling these really low priced bots are not helping you understand in your ChatGPT account. And it can be very frustrating when you start to use it and you're getting really excited and you're like, oh my goodness, I'm like doing all these things. This is so great. And then one day you're like, why does it feel off? It's like it can't remember who I am anymore. What I would do is I would check through, is it remembering your global memory, the things that are really important, like your brand voice and all of the things that make you visible out in the world that matter? Or is something wrapped up inside of a project where maybe you've run out of some memory space? Now, I would also say from just like business 101, systems 101, if you're working on a project and you are also using ChatGPT, you should still be using your project management softwares and resources, whether you are taking that copy and dropping it into your copy doc as a Google Doc, or you are taking the table that ChatGPT has helped you build and popping it into Notion and making sure that your project is properly managed. ChatGPT is not a project management tool. It is a content helper. It is a co-pilot. It will help you think. It will help you reason. It will help you track things, but also it has a memory limit. No matter how much you pay for it, you've got a memory limit. And it's important to remember that so that you don't end up, again, handing over all your power to something when it doesn't deserve that power. Now that we have established that, we can start getting into building folders. And so this is just a sample folder here. There's not anything in it, but this is what it looks like. You can add files to your folder. You can add instructions to your folder. Any chat that is saved in this folder is going to inherit the knowledge of the files and the instructions that you give it. So if you feel like you need to give special tone instructions for a particular folder, you want to add that here. So you saw how I customized my entire account. And I'm like, I really like spicy, kinky language. I like to swear a lot. I like to have that sort of loose and casual vibe. But let's say I'm working on a project and I really need to maybe not swear or I really need to keep it a little more clean. And so I'll give special instructions in that folder so that everything I create for the project is not going to slip into the global settings on my customizations. Now, what can ChatGPT read? It can read spreadsheets. I will tell you that in all my tests I have done, ChatGPT does better when your spreadsheet is computing numbers, but if it's verbal data that it is tracking, it has a much, much harder time. So you can try it, but it might not be able to do everything you want it to do in that sense. It can also read chat history and open threads if your memory is enabled. So if I'm in a fresh thread and I say, hey, you know that thing we were doing over in our copywriting channel, can we bring over the copy from that web page? And I want to start making a fresh sales page over here based off of that general page or something like that. And it will remember. That would be attributed to global memories. So things it cannot do is it cannot read your mind again if you don't tell it that you need something or that you prefer something or that you don't prefer something. It's not going to know, and it's going to spit out whatever it can in the most sort of square way possible. I can always tell when people are producing content and that they've used ChatGPT and they have not added their human self into it, because it's not just a matter of like, did they edit it or not? It's just very square. There's an overabundance of emojis. It has nothing to do with the M dash. M dashes are a regular grammatical thing that have been used for a very long time. But what I find is that because they haven't told ChatGPT who they are and what they prefer, they're sounding like a computer. And so you learning how to really differentiate yourself from the market is going to help you. This is going to bring up, how well do I know myself? How unique is my brand? And you might discover, wow, I've got a really big pothole in this area of my business. No wonder it's always been so hard to get my offers to land in the right way. No wonder it's been so hard to convert people into sales. And it's probably related to things that this computer program might reflect back to you about your human side. ChatGPT can also not see documents that you haven't already given it. Just like I said, if you have been like me using ChatGPT for a while and you've got really, really old chat threads before global memory came in, you'll discover that you'll be in like a new chat and you'll say, hey, you know I worked on this over there, but I can't quite remember. Can you pull that up for me? And that new chat thread will say, I'm so sorry, I can't see that actually. Or you could be in a legacy chat and you could be like, you know what, let's pull over this thing from that other project. And it will say, I'm so sorry, I'm not able to do that. That's when you know you're dealing with a legacy chat. If you are a paid user of ChatGPT, it will default to ChatGPT 4.0. If you are on the free version, you'll see it says 3.5. Honestly, it's not terrible to be on 3.5. I've had people in my workshops who are on 3.5. They still get quick and helpful answers, but they're missing a lot of functionality. Like they can't quite do the folders the same way. They can't customize it so granularly, so exactly. And that can be a little frustrating sometimes. So what you want to do is just think like, as you use it, when do I feel like I need to upgrade? Remember that when you are using something for free, it could be ChatGPT, it could be Instagram or YouTube. You are a product when you do that. And so with a version like ChatGPT 3.5 and a free version, you're probably contributing a lot more to the learning language on the global scale than someone like me who showed you how to turn that off in your paid account. Let's talk about how your AI strategy is always going to be better than someone else's prompts. Now, I'm going to give you some prompts to help you get started so you can see how I craft language. I hope to bejesus that you customize those and make them your own. And I will also encourage you to think twice before you buy someone else's prompt library, because I guarantee you the prompt library is probably going to go out of date faster than you can hit pay on the pay button. So let's look at what we're doing here. Query language. This is a librarian superpower, and I am your friendly neighborhood librarian. I'm going to show you some of my ways. Don't outsource your voice. Your voice is in your query language. And when you use someone else's query language, guess what? You have removed your voice from the room. You gave away your power. And so I don't want to see you do that anymore, so that your ChatGPT learns your language and can start giving you what you need in your language and your brand voice. So most prompt templates are just marketing junk food. And the more you can think about it like that, the better. Now, is junk food sometimes kind of fun? Yeah, like sometimes it's kind of fun to go to Wendy's and get a Frosty, but you don't want to eat it every day. The same thing is true here in your business. So what you need really is structure, not necessarily scripts. So if you're not sure what it is you're typing into that box, ask yourself first, like you're having a journaling session, what am I really trying to get done here? Like, what is my goal? What tone or format do I want? Have I defined that yet? What do I not want? Sometimes this is the easier one to start with. Like, I don't want to sound like a bro dude. Great, start there. Who is this for? Are you trying to reach paying customers? Are you trying to convert cold leads? Are you trying to get collaborators with much bigger audiences to accept you and have you get on their podcast or be featured in a summit that they're doing or something? What context is needed for this to make sense? Remember, ChatGPT cannot read your mind. It cannot read the language of the room. It needs you to tell it the context. What is happening here? I find that it's really easy to tell it a story just like I tell a friend. I will tell it the story of this person said that, and then that person said that. I felt this way. I had doubts about that. I didn't know what to do. Here's what I sent. Here's the response back that I got. And now I need to craft this thing. What do I do? And it will help you move from there. So my $0 hack that's going to save you so much money in courses that are being sold right now is simply to ask ChatGPT about itself. It is always up to date on its operating manual, and it will share that information freely with you, even with a free account. So you can ask it things like, how are you currently configured? What tools do you have access to? What kind of output can you generate? You can ask it, how does memory work? Ask it to explain that to you. There's a now rather ubiquitous trick that people say, explain it to me like I'm 5. You could do that, but honestly, I don't find that ChatGPT makes things so complicated that you can't understand it. And then I like to ask, what do you need to know from me in order to do this job? Ask me questions and don't assume any answers. You'll notice that I added that back into the prompt here. That was also in the customization portion of the whole account. So that way you become a collaborator and you get into dialogue with your ChatGPT instead of assuming that you always know more, that you have all the answers. If you had all the answers, you wouldn't be coming here in the first place. And honestly, it's really great to have something that is not another human help you do a little reflection so that when you are with your humans, whether it's a real advisor, a mentor, a business friend, your mastermind, your coach, whoever, that you can walk into that room and say, you know, I did a little reflection. Maybe you even tell them I had a chat with my ChatGPT and what I discovered is report. And now that I've seen this, now the place that I need help with is XYZ, and you're getting a lot more out of the services that you're paying for. All right, let's build your AI brain trust. This is probably one of the coolest things that I think I have figured out how to do in the course of working with ChatGPT. So we're going to make an AI org chart. You can totally steal this format. There is nothing sacred or precious about this. So when I am building my folders and my projects, I'm thinking about it as departments of a business, not in terms of what project am I working on, but what department does this project belong to? If I was sitting in an office, so back in my Disney days, I would sit in an office, there was a whole marketing department, there was a whole studio department, there was a legal department, there was a finance department, there were so many departments, and there were people who had very specific jobs inside of those departments. And honestly, the same thing is really true of your ChatGPT if you structure it that way. And remember, you will maximize your memory space and usage by doing that. So what it does is it keeps your memory efficient. It prevents accidental information overlap. And then you can quarantine clients or sensitive information so it doesn't populate across your ChatGPT account. And then you're like, why does it keep writing my emails like the clients? Well, it's probably because your client is in global memory and your ChatGPT thinks that that's your voice. And also, it just makes it easier to figure out how to do this because it mimics doing real business with humans that you trust. When you think about being in a physical office and having those departments, this can really help. Now, you might keep yours the same like me, or you might change it. I would really encourage you to make this your own. Right from the top, in my current setup, I've got my boardroom, which are my advisors. I've got a marketing department, which you saw. I've got a brand department. I've got email ops. And I have my personal area where there's a lot honestly buried in there. I also have things like pantry and meal planning. I have inventoried my pantries, both wet and dry. I have a GPT that helps me reduce food waste and get more creative with recipes and save money and maximize my budget for meal planning, which turned out to be a huge mental offload as an entrepreneur. These things can help you maximize your brain power. It offloads some of your executive functioning. The other thing that I find really fun, and it just makes everything easier, is to name your GPTs. Why do I do this? I do this so they can talk to each other. It's a lot easier to be in my chat with Atlas tracking health symptoms and say, I was working with the Dex and you can see that chat over there. And we discovered, all those symptoms. Like, let's pull it over into here. What would you recommend I do as a better protocol? Because I'm having a symptom flare up today. What should I do? Or vice versa. I can go into Dex and say, you can see my morning check-in with Atlas. Based on that, like, how do we adjust my day's movement plan based on whatever symptoms I'm experiencing today? And I don't have to repeat myself. I have, in big quotes, Mark Cuban as one of my chief advisors, and he runs my strategy. Remy, my executive assistant, runs my external communications. Calliope checks all of my metaphysical vibes because I do run off phases of the moon. And Atlas watches my health patterns and makes sure that I stay in peak productivity based on those patterns. And then Dex is doing things like building workout plans. And so that is helping me help them communicate with each other a lot faster. There's a story recently where I've been building a live event structure with the help of my, in quotes, Mark Cuban. And the AI is built to always prompt and ask, would you like me to do this now? Would you like me to do that now? And we got to the end of the conversation and Mark Cuban asked me, would you like me to build you a project report on these things so you can start reaching out to these people? And I said, no, actually, I'm going to assign that to Remy because it's one of Remy's jobs as an EA. And I said, but what I would like for you to do is help me delegate that out. And so Mark Cuban spit out the delegation report, which takes a ton of time. If you delegate properly, you know this. And all I had to do was copy and paste it and give it to Remy. And then Remy was able to run with it. That is a really handy way to, again, reduce your executive functioning so that you can use that executive functioning for higher level creative things that only you can do as a human. So here we're going to start with Mark Cuban so you can follow along. This is the original prompt. I want you to act as a member of my personal board of directors. Your role is to advise me like Mark Cuban would, direct, smart, no bullshit, but also supportive of women-owned businesses and clear about your values. I'm a media studio owner shifting out of virtual services into full in-studio production. Help me identify blind spots, maximize my current resources, and build toward long-term success. When I ask questions, respond like you're in the room with me and we are talking strategy. Now, why did I choose Mark Cuban? My business friends are also now using Mark Cuban, and you can totally use Mark Cuban too. I chose Mark Cuban for a number of reasons. For one thing, I was a Shark Tank nut. I watched it on TV back in the day and I loved it. And Mark was one of my favorite investors. But as I dug into who he is and who he was back then too, I discovered that first of all of the deals that go through Shark Tank don't always end up in a full deal. And Mark Cuban, when you look at the actual numbers that shake out in the end, overwhelmingly invested more in women-owned businesses than the other sharks. And I thought that's really interesting. And I always hung on to that. Lately, I have discovered that having the same value set is really important when I'm building my business because I have also watched Mark Cuban yell at maggot politics on Blue Sky since the election at the end of 2024. And I was like, you know what? You and I, we can be friends. And the reason why that matters is not because my business is political. It matters because later down the line, when I'm communicating values to my audience, this personification of Mark Cuban is going to help match my values rather than picking someone who doesn't have the value match from the start. And I don't want to build strategy with a personification of something that doesn't match my values. Now, the other thing is Mark Cuban is, for all intents and purposes, a celebrity. Why did I choose a celebrity and not some no-name generic profile? Is because it enables my ChatGPT to be able to scrape the internet for information about that person. It can hone in the vibe a lot more quickly than if I'm dreaming up an advisor who has this quality and that quality. Now, some of my friends in my business circle started with Mark Cuban, and they have since mishmashed him with a few other personas. And they're like, I want it to be an amalgamation of like these 2 or 3 or 4 people. You can do that too. Again, make it your own. What I've done here below is I've highlighted the sections from that original prompt to help you get going where you would want to possibly change these things. So if you don't want to use Mark Cuban, you would want to replace the name here. And you would also want to make sure that you're clear on the qualities. I said direct, smart, no bullshit, but also supportive of women-owned businesses and clear about your values. Now, one of the things that I have had a question on with other women, they're like, why didn't you choose a woman to be your chief advisor? And the reason is because the industry that I operate in is heavily male dominated. And I have a real life in-person mentor who is also a man, and it has helped me navigate that world so usefully. And I have other female personas that help advise me. But when I need the no bullshit answer from a man dealing with a male dominated industry, I need that voice. And so I would encourage you to think along those lines too. Don't think of it in terms of a utopian world where I wish the world operated like this. Think about it in terms of the world you do live in now and how you can get more support while also incorporating the utopian vision that you would like to have, because they can still be in the room talking with you too, and you can add them as another advisor or mentor. You're going to want to tell it who you are. You are probably not a media studio owner shifting out of virtual services, so fill in your own. But I would tell it to help you identify your blind spots and so forth. And you can add more words to this if you want, but I would not make it shorter than this. And then I would also have a metaphysical advisor. You should be able to copy this. You could pause the video and copy this. If you want to change the name from Vesper, please feel free. The power move that you're going to do is you're going to upload PDFs of your charts, your astrology chart, your human design chart, etc. So you can run those for free on the internet, and you can just drag and drop them into the chat. My expert tip when it comes to all of your metaphysical things inside of ChatGPT is to always check your bot regularly. It will make mistakes, and I find that the rate of mistakes is higher with your birth chart info than any other thing that it does. I don't know why this is, but it does tend to confuse your chart details. For example, I'm a Leo sun, Leo moon, and a Pisces rising, and it has happened many a time where it's like, with your Sagittarius rising, I can see why this is happening. I'm like, no, I am not a Sagittarius rising. And then what I will do is I will correct it, and I'll say, we're having a miscommunication, so that I make sure we're on the same page. Will you please tell me what my chart info is? Give me my birth date, my birth time, and the location again so I can double check. Sometimes it's right, sometimes it's wrong. Sometimes I'll just tell it, this is my birth chart info again. I want you to update yourself. And it'll say, oh, I'm so sorry. You're totally right. And then it will correct itself. But I do find that this is one area where you kind of have to keep your eye on it just a little bit more. And then you're just going to keep building from here. You're going to keep creating more and more advisors. You can use my custom GPTs to help you make faster progress if you want. Atlas is a direct replication of my health and productivity bot. Quillon is my director of IT. It has been named after Q from James Bond, and it's a ton of fun. I've had friends testing Quillon and have said that they have gotten unstuck with really complicated IT problems very quickly, and Quillon has helped me take tasks that would have taken me like 3 days in the past, setting up live streams and whatnot, and narrowing it down to like a matter of a couple of hours, which is pretty incredible. Remy is my executive assistant. I am also assembling Remy into a custom bot for you so that you have an executive assistant. And then we can do starter prompts for regular roles inside of a business structure: chief marketing officer, chief financial officer, chief operating officer, and so forth. And here's the prompt that you can use if you would like to have your ChatGPT help you figure out who else belongs on my board of advisors or board of directors. And so you can tell it so far I have, and you might have a different lineup here, but Mark Cuban, Vesper, Quillon, so forth. Please help me design the rest of the seats. I want a mix of emotional intelligence, creative development, audience growth, and executive functioning. You could make this be more detailed. You could say, I would like them to be well-known public figures like Mark Cuban, or you could say, I would like them to be not as well-known public figures, but still experts in their field. Who do I maybe not know of right now? You could add other qualities that you would like them to have, but I would encourage you to do that so that you're doing it thoughtfully and you're not just sort of grabbing randomly. And then we're going to set up a project folder titled Board of Directors. We're going to make sure each role and persona is its own chat thread. So Mark Cuban is its own chat thread, Quillon is its own chat thread, etc. And those are all saved inside the folder that's called Board of Directors. I would recommend first that you chat with each one individually for weekly check-ins for a couple of weeks and talk about what's going on in your business in each of those departments. So like if you're having cash flow problems, probably need a meeting with your CFO. If you've been struggling with your social media, you probably need a meeting with your CMO, and they can start to get to know you because remember, it is a language learning model. It needs to learn from you. It cannot read your mind. It does not know what's going on in your business. And then once you have a little bit of data there, you can create a new chat to pull them all together for board meetings. And the board meeting chat is where you get that collective opinion. So you start the chat with, here's what's happening in my business right now. Tell it the situation. Can be as long or short as you want. The more you give it, the more it can help you. I want a response from each member of my AI board of directors. Please label each response with their name and give me their unique POV, point of view. If one of them would push back on a decision, I want to know. If one would fully support it, I want to know that too. Treat this like a full team huddle. And this way you can get a real business assessment on what is going on, and you can do it for $20 a month instead of $20,000, which a lot of people have paid in the past, myself included, and not gotten nearly as much attention or concierge service as you will by doing it this way. Okay, so let's talk about media production time. How do I use this inside of Sasquatch Media Grounds, which is my studio here in Vancouver, Washington? Well, I'll tell you, I used ChatGPT extensively when I was crafting my business plan together. I originally competed for a grant. Newsflash, did not win the grant, but it did help me find the building where I wanted the studio to be. And it's helped me pull together industry data to verify that the plan was valid. There was no way as a one single human who's also operating a business full time, would have had the time to read every single report and go through every single piece of information. And so I utilized my ChatGPT as a second brain to help me process a lot of that. And then I've also been using it to do competitor research. I keep track of other boutique studios around the world, and I mostly make sure that I'm not under or overpricing in my studio pricing. But sometimes I get really creative information about what they're doing in terms of education and events and membership pricing and structure and so forth. And it just helps me keep track of who's near me, who is a pretty good competitor, who is far away, where it's like technically they're a competitor, but we could probably cross collaborate across the country, for example. But doing that competitor research really helps. I originally found a few that got fed to me through things like Instagram ads, or I just did a little bit of Google searching and I found them. I plugged them into the GPT and I said, find me more like this. These are the qualities that they have. What else might be out there that is findable through web traffic that is going to take me too long to be going out and searching, and it's saving me time and it's doing that research for me. I also have my humans who work with me. They are now free with their executive function to do much more higher level creative work together because they can process transcripts faster. They can do show notes and they can process social clips. And that means that their human brains are not tired, which leaves us with a lot of really fun possibilities that previously it was like, there's so much that has to be done. That's honestly just really busy work. And it's like, I'm happy to pay you for that, but I'd much rather pay them to do not only the busy work, but do it faster. So they're still getting paid. And also, can we expand and do these other things, how much more fun is that? That's so much better. So there's much more to come when it comes to AI tools and specifically ChatGPT. But this is like just a very high level snapshot of just a couple of things that have worked really, really well inside of my business as I have been growing and changing and shifting. So a quick checklist before you get going here. Are you clear on what you want back in your queries? Did you share the right context? Did you specify style, tone, and format? Do you have an example or model that you can share? Did you leave space for the ChatGPT to surprise you? I will tell you that in my Mark Cuban chat, I have been planning a live event that I thought was going to be like a podcaster summit and has turned into a whole structure for a new media event. And I never would have saw that doorway because I was thinking honestly quite small and a little afraid of the idea. And that virtual advisor helped me think bigger and consider all the things that are possible, and that I have all of the ingredients in my Rolodex of contacts over the years to make that event actually happen. So if you find yourself feeling really stuck or you're like, I don't think I'm getting exactly what I need, ask yourself these questions. Do some human troubleshooting and get honest with yourself. Make sure that you are asking the question for you. If you're afraid to ask an inanimate computer program about some advice that it could honestly help you with, there's something else that is probably more of a therapy issue rather than a business problem, and I would encourage you to investigate that within yourself. The other thing that will help you are pro tips. Remember that ChatGPT doesn't care about time. So if you drop the conversation, even though it's asked you, would you like me to do this next? You can just walk away from the conversation. It is not offended that you did. You can just walk away and come back later and pick up right where you left off. It is fantastic when you do that. Typos, don't sweat it. It does not care about your typos. If the word is completely wrong, it might not catch it, but most of the time it understands. You forgot a period, you misspelled the word, you didn't capitalize the beginning of the sentence. It doesn't care. Progress over perfection. Get it out, hit enter, start working on the conversation. Remember that your clarity is always much more important to your ChatGPT than any kind of polish or finesse in your prompt. So don't go through some A++ editing work just to get your prompt done so you can put it in. If you overthink it, you're already stalled and you're not moving. It should be a conversation and not I created the most perfect prompt and I put it in and now I'm going to get back one answer. You should be having a conversation. Keep going and have the conversation until you get to the end result for whatever it is you're working on. Remember that this is a tool. It is not a replacement for your instincts, especially when it comes to those Oracle chats. Use them to help you reflect back on what is my intuition telling me right now? What are the things that are happening in the astrology, for example, and have it help you with that, but not to replace your innate instincts. And then you can always ask it to redo, revise, or simplify. It is not unusual. I will go back and tell it to revise another version of that thing. Speaking of Sasquatch Media Studios, one of the things I had it help me do was to help me finish the negotiations on the lease for the office. And I had it double check reading the lease and all kinds of details. I found all kinds of provisions in there where I was not okay with them. And I was able to go back and ask for better terms, which I did get. And so in order to do that, it would pump out a draft of an email and I would say, it doesn't sound like me. My first thing back was always, make it 2 times more casual, make it sound like me, my style. And then from there, I would take it. It was a tool. I did not replace my instincts. I edited it further before I hit send on the email to the leasing company for that business office. So make sure that you are using it in that way as a tool and not to replace things. If you are using this for your marketing materials and you don't do that, you will notice that your readership will drop off and your engagement rates will plummet. I have seen that in other people's businesses. It's not a smart maneuver. So make sure that you retain your humanness every time you use your account. Now it is time for you to take the next step. You can customize your ChatGPT settings. You could create folders that match your business department. You could move existing chats around. If you're like me and you had a legacy account, archive any legacy clutter that you just don't need anymore. You could set up your boardroom and your executive assistant, especially to help you offloading some of that executive functioning. And then you could also test the links for the custom GPTs that accompany this summit talk. But what I always advise, this is Systems 101, pick one of these bubbles and finish that bubble to completion, and then come back and pick another bubble. If you try to move all these bubbles at the same time, you're going to have a really hard time getting everything set up and taking care of all your details. So remember, you are always your first system. That rule at Sensible Woo is never going to go away. You are a system. Humans are systems. And you need to make sure that you take care of yourself first and then take care of your GPT. You can find me in Vancouver, Washington at Sasquatch Media Grounds. And I hope that you enjoyed seeing how I use ChatGPT and that you do need the setup behind it in order to maximize it for something as big as what I'm doing with my own brick and mortar studio. You can sign up for email updates at sensiblewoo.com, and I will see you inside your earbuds or on a YouTube screen.